Hello, everyone. We're back with another episode of Tarot Art Symposium, and today we get to interview and pick the mastermind of Trisha Shufelt, Trisha Leigh Shufelt of artandsoul.org. She created the Heartful Spirits Tarot, which I believe was self-published, the Poet Tarot out with Schiffer Publishing. And if I'm correct, is she working on a deck or something's coming out called the Everglow? So we definitely want to learn more about that. I will now pass it off to my co-host, Anna Turian.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming by again and joining us to talk about Trisha's deck and get a little bit of an insight and some new scoops. So I'm going to start off with the first question. So Trisha, how did you come to illustrate your own deck? Now, I know you've done this for a while, so.
Well, not for a long while, but my first deck was actually a Kickstarter. It was called the Heartful Spirits Tarot. And that was back in 2018. And then my next deck, and that was a full-length tarot, a Rider-Waite-Smith type format. And then my next deck was the Poe Tarot, which was picked up by Red Feather, which is a division of Schiffer Publishing. And they're also doing another one for me, the Everglow.
Nice. So are you doing the Everglow at the same, like right now? You're working on that right now?
The Everglow is done. The only thing that I'm waiting for from my publisher is edits, just to kind of look them over, but it's slated for launch in October. So it's on pre-order right now for anybody who's interested, but I actually was working on it at the tail end of the Poe Tarot. So I was kind of doing both decks at the same time. And then but the Poe Tarot went to them first back in, oh, well, that's a long story, but they had it in 2019 and then it just launched at the end of December of last year. So it's still kind of brand new.
We love to talk about the creative process. So at what point do you realize that the seed of a full-fleshed tarot deck or oracle deck has downloaded in your mind? And what is that developmental process like for you from that seed in your mind for a project all the way to completion?
Oh, wow. Well, for me, like with the Poe Tarot, I had that idea for a long time. It was kind of brewing in the back of my mind. I always thought it would be a nice thing to kind of mesh Edgar Allan Poe's stories and poems with artwork. But it basically, for me, I usually start out with the majors first. And then once I have those done, I kind of know that it's, and I have it in the back of my mind too, the suits, it's like, okay, the suits are going to be this. And then, but once I complete the majors, I know that I'm on the right path.
Could we see some of your artwork?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What would you like to see?
Well, let's take a look at some of the Poe Tarot cards. And then I think Heartful Spirits, do you still have some on hand?
I do.
Just like, kind of go through them so we can kind of see your art. Do you want to begin with Heartful Spirits? I love to see the evolution of an artist's, their own line work, their own skill and technique, and how you interpret the different cards.
Sure. If you hear something in the background, it's my dog. She has a little bit of a cold right now, so she keeps sneezing. But okay, the Heartful Spirits. Let's see. The Heartful Spirits Tarot. It's actually kind of funny because all of my decks are really different. It's kind of hard to see like sort of the evolution of where they go, because I tend to, I can't tend to go wherever I want, and nothing really follows a pattern, but I would say, let me see if I can find some cards here for you. This was actually the back of the Heartful Spirits Tarot card. And this deck had kind of, it was just sort of a whimsical look to it, very colorful. It came around the time I had just I had come out of breast cancer treatment. So I was looking to do something that was lighthearted, kind of healing, that type of thing. And each card had almost like the keywords at the bottom. So let's see. This was the death card, actually.
Oh, it's beautiful, like a little portal.
Yeah, exactly. This was the star.
This is watercolor and ink.
Yes. Yeah, these were all done in watercolor and ink. I used to actually do, I consider myself kind of a mixed media artist. I've dabbled in just about everything from sculpture to acrylics to, again, to watercolors and everything. So I used to do everything on canvas. And then I started, when I moved into a smaller house. So I started doing everything in books. So literally all my originals are in books now. But so this is the Heartful Spirits Tarot, and it was a Kickstarter. And then I went to the Poe Tarot, let's see, which is kind of a complete departure because it's a black and white deck with just a little bit of color sort of in the, this is the actual box.
This one's all pen and ink, right?
Yes, yes, it's all black and white. This is the Fool card, and it follows Edgar Allan Poe on the journey through the Tarot with quotes from his various stories and poems and that type of thing. But it was more of a the art was sort of influenced by Ed Gorey, kind of like the Ed Gorey style of artwork, kind of whimsical, macabre, that type of thing. And then Edgar sort of.
I love the fact because so both Benabel and I, we work with line drawings, right? So I just love to see other artists and how their their style is, and you have a very unique style. Like I could see if you showed me 30 artists with pen and ink drawings, I would know your style. I would know it's you.
Really?
Yeah. It's like,
and
even
that's
like,
funny because I never consider myself having any kind of style.
no, there's a certain like a curve to your drawings. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's like I would say, like, if you were to paint the brush stroke, the stroke itself is very unique. So when I see your work on Instagram, sometimes, like, how it just scrolls, like you just see things, I know it's you. I don't even have to read the name.
It's expressive and abstract, and then, like you said, it has that macabre like feel to it because it is Poe. I really do love that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I did all of when I did these, I did them, like I said, I keep everything in books now. So the drawings actually, and they kind of evolved over time. And there's some things I used and some things I didn't. Like, for example, this was
we get to see the original drawings. Oh my gosh, what a treat.
This is actually, this drawing was used for the judgment card. So this one stayed. But this one,
textures, oh my gosh, like the way you do the textures and the depth. Wow.
What did you draw? I mean, what did you use? Like the pens?
Micron pens. Yeah. Yeah. And then this one was actually supposed to be the Temperance card, but it never made it. I just decided to do a different type of Temperance card. So, oh, I got tissue paper flying out here.
Oh
yeah, this actually
tissue paper in between the pages, right?
Yes, exactly. This actually became the Temperance card.
Oh.
Nice.
So
it's very organic. So your shapes are very organic. Like that's yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of, what do they call that? That type of Zentangle. Is that it? With the curling of the lines and stuff. I do a little bit of that, I think, in these, but yeah, so this was the Justice card. Ended up becoming the Justice card. So
wow.
Yeah.
I love how you use the solid black with the white. I think you need to be very bold. I feel like to use that solid black. I'm always too scared to go in with that much black, but then it looks so good when it's done right.
It does, you know, and that took a little bit of practice. And like you said, when you first do it, it's like I was a little bit timid about it.
Right, right.
But I also use sometimes I'll use like white gel pens to kind of offset the lines just a little bit in case things are blending a little too much. But yeah, so that's that for that one.
So let me
This
ask
is-
you, like, when did you decide to go from Kickstarter to go through a publisher? Like, did you, like, how did you decide to do that? Because there's pros, you know, there's benefits, and
Yep.
you know, for each one.
It was this is kind of a funny story with that. When I finished the Heartful Spirits, doing a Kickstarter, that was a real learning experience because I didn't realize the amount of work that was going to be involved in that. And, you know, from the shipping overseas and handling, you know, all of it. When I started the Poe Tarot, it was a completely different deck. The concept was completely different. As a matter of fact, I have the original deck with me. The concept, actually, this is what it looked like before. It was more of a collage style. So, and I was using like almost like cemetery monuments and that type of thing. I didn't really realize the logistics behind that, you know, I would need to get permission for using those kinds of things. So what happened was, when I started out doing that deck, I thought the concept of it was really good. You know, I love the idea of Poe and Tarot. And so I submitted that to my current publisher, of course, and they said no. They flat out, no, we don't want this. So I thought, no, this is still good. This is a really good concept. But what I realized was it didn't have myself in it. So that's why I went back to the drawing board, redrew it, redesigned it, resubmitted it. And at that point, they picked it up. So, so for me, what I love the difference between the two is like once it's with them, it's sort of out of my hands. They're doing all the packaging and the shipping and all of that kind of work. So I can concentrate on the creative and marketing process. But it has its pros and cons, you know, obviously. I do love working with the publisher. I love what they bring to the table with it and the design of it, things that maybe I'm concentrating so much on the cards, I'm not thinking about the way the box is going to look.
Right.
Or things like that. So they were able to really kind of put something magical into it that, you know, something extra, which was really kind of cool. And I just like the fact that they're handling all the grunt work where that's concerned. But, you know, there is still, even once you hand it off, you're waiting, you know, that
Right.
process of, I think I gave it to them back in 2019. So, and it didn't launch until December 2021. So it just, you have to wait, you have to be patient. And I think
a recurring theme. When you do traditional publishing, it takes a long time.
it takes a long time. And it's funny because the Everglow was submitted about 6 months after the Poe Tarot. So because I was working on them sort of at the same time. So when they got that in 2019, it's going to launch October 2022. So it's a few years in between decks. And, you know, that's hard because I'm not a very patient person. I want to get the stuff out. But I love what they do with it. You know, they come up with things that I don't think I could have thought of. So it works.
I do want to ask you, because I forgot previously. So I think people would want to know in terms of, because how do you go about getting to the publisher, right? Because in some cases, after you do the Kickstarter, you know, people usually ask, like, okay, how do I get my deck to a publisher? What was your process in order to get picked up?
Well, I think with Schiffer, I went to their contact page, to their submission page.
Oh, you cold submitted. Wow.
Yeah, I cold submitted to them. I didn't have an agent. I know a lot of people work with agents, and that's how they get into a lot of the publishing houses. I just kind of went in and said, hey, here I am. I have this idea. They and the first couple that I submitted the Heartful Spirits to them, and they said no. And the first Poe Tarot, they said no. Very nicely though. They were very nice about it. It was probably one of the nicest rejection letters I've ever received. But so at that point, I just kind of it was like a cold call, a cold email. I sent it out. When I heard back from them, and they said, well, we're a little, we're kind of interested in this new version of the Poe Tarot. Can you send us some pictures? Now, at that point, I had all the majors done. I was partially through most of the suits, because I thought, well, if they don't like it, I am going to kickstart this one, because it was such a passion of mine to do. So I sent them some images, PDFs, kind of gave them a little background about how the book was. I don't even think the book was written at that point, but I knew where I had an outline, so I knew where I was going to go with it. And that's, at that point they said, well, we're going to send it through acquisitions. We're going to see what they think. And that was a couple months, I believe. And then I heard back from them, and it was all a go,
Was your
and I had a deadline, and then I had a deadline to meet.
Oh, was it complete when you submitted it, or did you submit samples in a portfolio?
It was almost complete at that point. So I was very lucky where that's concerned. When the Everglow was coming around, even though I was working on it sort of at the same time as I was working on or finishing the Poe Tarot, that was a whole different ball of wax, because it's not a traditional tarot deck. It's a divination system. So it was incorporating astrology and numerology and animal symbolism and all kinds of stuff in it. So I hadn't even thought about writing the book. I hadn't, none of that. So it was, that one was a real hurdle to get over.
We're always interested in the design process. So what is the daily grind like as an artist when you create a single card image? How long does it take?
How long does it take? Well, usually I can, if I sit down uninterrupted, I can usually do a card a day, because this is my full-time job. So, I can just kind of block off some time, sit down. I usually have an idea ahead of time of what I want to do for the card. And 90% of the time it comes out the way that I want. But then, life takes over, and the next day I can't spend time on it because I'm grocery shopping or I'm doing something else. So, but typically I can, get a card finished in one day. And I did, my cards typically are, I do them out in the sketchbook. I work a lot with either the black and white ink, and the Everglow is actually all in color. It's completely different. It's like marker and it's a true mixed media piece. It's marker and acrylic and watercolor and digital. So it's a little bit of everything with that deck. So that typically takes a little bit longer.
You do all your computer edits and all that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I do it all.
You don't hire a retoucher or a graphic designer to put your images in the cards or anything like that?
No, and as a matter of fact, it's kind of funny. The Everglow, this is, I'll show you an example from it. this is actually the image that they're going to use for. This is the image that they're going to use for the front cover or the box cover.
Mhm. Oh, I saw that on
So-
Facebook, I think.
Yeah,
A
so
wild
this is the-
imagination.
And then now it's actually, it's very light colored. It's done in watercolor ink, some marker, I think. But then when I actually do it on the computer, now you have to ignore how this is like my markups. But when I do it on the computer, I'm sort of enhancing the contrast, enhancing the, because to me, these books are just sort of the starting point. You know what I mean? They're not, to me, they're not finished products. The finished product is when it comes out, I don't know if I'll ever sell originals again. I used to sell originals all the time, and they had to be perfect and they had to be completely finished. And now it's like, to me, they're just sort of their preliminary sketches, preliminary artwork, and the finished product is after the digital enhancements and everything. And I'd like to say I use a program that's, really advanced, but I actually use something that's super, super old, and I just work with it and, add to it and play around with it until I like what I see.
You stay pretty true to the original illustration though, right? When you say you go digital, it seems like all you're really doing is just like contrast, saturation, like the digital alteration. You're not like going in, substantively editing digitally, correct?
The only thing that I do is sometimes I'll add, I might add a filter onto it, just to make it, as a matter of fact, with the Everglow, I added some filtering onto it to kind of make them glow a little bit, or make them, to make the lines pop more, like with poster edging and that kind of thing. But really, yeah, I do stay true to the original, and then it's just little enhancements to it, more or less.
Can you tell us some of the stories, like from your creation process, the challenges that you've had to encounter in terms of, creating the deck, and what you had to overcome? If there are any.
Yeah.
There might not be anything.
No, there's plenty. Well, I think there's the self-doubt of wondering, can I pull this off? Especially when I was doing the Poe Tarot, there's such a legion of fans out there that are really, they know the quotes, so I had to be really pretty accurate with that. It wasn't anything I could fool around with. And also at the time, it was interesting because I had submitted that deck, and I guess about 6 months into it, I was scrolling on Amazon and I saw a pre-order for the other Edgar Allan Poe deck. And I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted, because I thought, no,
They're so different. They're really different.
But it's completely different. Exactly. It's completely different. And so, I had to kind of get over that, that thing in the back of my head of like, but I have a deck here,
It's like two vampire decks or two animal decks.
Exactly.
They're
Poe is
very
so
different.
ubiquitous in
They're
the
very
pop
different.
culture.
Exactly. And that was one of the things my editor told me. She's like, they're completely different. Don't let yourself go worked up about it, because I was so not mad by any stretch, but it was just like, when you think you have something, this new thing that you've come up with, this new concept, it's like, oh, they beat me to the punch, so there was a little bit of that in the back of my mind. And then I thought, well, is it going to be as good? Is it going to be received well? Because there's always, there's one out there. So that was kind of a hurdle for me to kind of get over and deal with. And I think just trusting, the process of what you're doing, of what you're creating, and believing in it. Because like when I went from that deck to the Everglow, it was a completely different, it was like turning a switch on and off. I had to shift gears And, you know, I was creating a complete system. So that was tough, you know, is this going to be usable? Are people going to, you know, when I was doing Poe, I was following a formula, you know, I was doing the Rider-Waite-Smith formula. So it really, that was outlined to me. That made it easier for me. This was like, it's kind of like, I find Oracle decks harder.
Really? I actually find them easier.
Really? So you think it's easier to follow the like an RWS formula or like a tarot formula versus the blank canvas of an oracle?
Yes, absolutely. I find it so difficult.
Oh, that's so funny.
I'm
like
the opposite. I'm the total opposite.
No, see, to me, it's like the imagery is already there, sort of in the back of your mind with tarot, and the system is already there. Oracle is, you have to come up with this concept, and like, you know, you're creating it sort of from scratch, from your, not that you're not creating from your imagination with tarot, because you are, but to me, it's just so different. Like, I'm working on an oracle deck right now as a follow-up to the Poe Tarot, and while I'm using Poe, you know, it's called the Nevermore Oracle. So it's going to be incorporating Poe's stories, but still I have to come up with that whole image in the back of my mind. And then how do I relate this to an oracle, which is to me more or less, you know, you're giving sort of advice, you're trying to find wisdom in that unique type of card that's all your imagination.
You're also a fiction writer, right? You publish fiction. How much of that fiction writing background do you think you rely on or pull into when you do an oracle deck?
Well, I think the concept of knowing your story ahead of time.
Right,
a little
story
bit
plotting, structure, characters.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of a fly by my seat of my pants.
Pantser.
when I'm writing, but I do know sort of like the beginning, and I know the end, and I know elements in between. Okay.
Are you a pantser or plotter with your artwork? You kind of start with a blank canvas and go where your hand goes, or do you have the whole entire card composition mapped out in your mind and then you're just?
I'm a pantser. No. You know, I might have like, okay, I want to create a particular card, but when I start to sit down and I'm actually doing it, it's almost, I always tell my husband, it's almost like something takes over and it just sort of happens. It just sort of evolves. And I don't know where it comes from, to be honest with you. I really don't, but it's kind of like the same thing with writing. I might have a general idea of where I want the story to go, but along the way, there's going to be curves and there's going to be changes and there's, you know, and I think that when I'm doing artwork, it's the same way. I just sort of let it go wherever it takes me.
I think you said the Everglow Tarot is already done, right? And so yes. Are you working on anything right now? Can you give us any clues or hints into what you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on a few different things. I'm working on the Nevermore Oracle, which is the follow-up to the Poe Tarot. And I actually have another book here. I can give you a hint.
Yes, please. Show us. Okay. I'm going to spotlight you for right now.
Okay. Let's see. This is, I don't want to show you this one picture because it's kind of gross.
Now we have to see it.
I'll show you that. This is from Annabelle Lee.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
The poem Annabelle Lee. So this is going to be part of it. Let's see what else. This is the Raven.
Wow.
So Poe's still involved.
Yeah.
So you're creating kind of like this frame around each image, right? They're they're contained within almost like their own world.
Yes, exactly. Like
it has a very Victorian look to it. Anna, who is that? There's an artist from I think the 1800s, Alice something maybe. Do you know what I'm talking about? That has that same kind of like slightly abstract look. It looks a lot like what Trisha's doing here. I can't remember the name, but it's a really well-known artist.
I
I'll have to
can't,
get
I
back
don't
on
know.
that, but
Show me, because I want to see if you find it.
So I'm working on that. I'm working on a dark circus tarot. That actually I've been working on for a while, but it keeps getting pushed back. It's like, it's, you know, I started working on it, it's almost done, and then something else will come up and I'll start working on that deck, but I'm working on it. I'm working on the Seashell Oracle. I'm working on my second book of poetry. I just released my first book of poetry.
Right, because you're also a poet, so you're a writer. I think you have a novel too, right? A couple of novels.
I have actually I'm working on my 6th novel.
Wow.
The first, this is actually, yeah, because I write under a pen. So my novels are under a pen name, Andalee Archer. And this is actually,
oh wow.
this is the series. This is the whole series. But it's this one has 3 books in it. And then the poems, those are under my name. So this is,
I don't know when you have time to do the books and the tarot and the oracle.
I don't know either. I sort of make the time, and I'm actually, you know, really lucky now that I can stay home and devote full time to my artwork. I started doing that in 2013, and prior to that, I had a full-time job, and I was, you know, doing the art on the side. So it's luckily my, you know, husband, he's out doing, you know, earning the money for the bills, and which is great, and allows me to be creative, which is really wonderful. So I just trying to make, I always say I'm a jack of all trades, master of none.
Can I ask you, what's your favorite suit to illustrate?
I like them all, to be honest with you, but I think probably cups.
Really?
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because I'm a Libra, I'm an air sign, so you'd think it would be swords, but I really enjoy doing the cup suit for some reason. Maybe because I am an air sign and I tend to be up in my head more. The cups being sort of the emotional connection. I really like dive into that, and I enjoy it a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, I love swords. I'm fire. I'm like a fire element. So I can't, well, I'm not going to say I can't stand them, but I have a difficulty more with wands. So I love air. I think Benabelle, you like air too.
Yeah, I like the swords as well. I kind of like cups second, and we both agree that wands are the most difficult ones.
See, now I agree with you there. I think if I had to pick, I kind of like doing all of them, but if I had to pick my least favorite, it would definitely be wands. I just, there's something about it that I'm kind of like, I'm just not into.
I'm curious though, since all 3 of us least like the wands, and I think a lot of artists have expressed that sentiment when you're talking about the tarot, can you give us your theory or hypothesis for why? Why do you dislike the wands the most?
I don't know. I just, you think they'd be exciting because of what they're supposed to, they're supposed to entail, but I
magic.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know. I never, it doesn't do it for me. It's kind of hard to explain, but I don't find them as intriguing for some reason. So
if I had to
the wand, maybe it's the fact that it's a wand. I'm thinking maybe if we just remove the actual wand and just kept fire. I don't know, like the flame.
I think when I did the Poe Tarot,
I think the wands take up too much space on it, so you almost feel like you're beholden to just draw the wands, and your creativity has to take a back seat, maybe.
Yeah,
especially if you have to put 10 or 9 or 8.
Exactly.
I did mine as candles, for
Poe Tarot.
For Poe. Yeah, I did them as candles, but yeah, I'm looking at the cards now, and you're right. They do take up a lot of space. It's like you have to, like the 10 of candles or 10 of wands. There's a lot there, you know? So yeah, I agree with that. Takes up too much space.
So in terms of social media, like I know you are on Facebook, you're on Instagram. Do you find that there's any struggle with that? Do you feel pressured to show, to be involved, on social media? And
Yes.
lastly, do you feel like there's in a way that you're kind of pressured to be online versus what you would like to?
Yeah, I would just, social media is sort of a necessary evil, but unfortunately, when I first started out doing this many years ago, and I first was on I think I joined Facebook back in like 2007. It was very different. You could put your art out there and you could get sales from it pretty easily. You could network and get a base of fans that just would, oh, you're an artist, and they would follow you, and it was great, and everybody saw what you were doing. It was pretty easy. Now it's pay to play on most social media platforms. They know the algorithms. If you're trying to cheat and put your art up there and sell anything, they know, and it's like you're just not seen. And I think that's part of the difficulty. I think it's evolved so much that like platforms like TikTok, unless you're on there constantly, every single day promoting your with a new thing that's going to get people engaged, the reach is very difficult. So I actually just ended my TikTok account for my books, because I just felt that it was just too much. I was spending too much time trying to launch that kind of stuff, and it was taking away from the creative process. Because I would much rather be doing that, honestly, than the marketing and social media. But I try to do, I think like Instagram, I've had a little bit more success with. I try to do like a reading once a week, with my deck, and just that kind of thing. And it's getting some hits, but it's tough. It is really hard. It's not like it used to be.
You know what?
I find Instagram a little easier. Sorry.
You find Instagram a little easier?
Hmm?
I do, yes. I find Instagram a little easier because you can just show the images, and you don't have to like constantly, like TikTok, you have to constantly be on there. And also Twitter, there's like that. Instagram, you can just put it up and let the chips fall where they may.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Plus, I think too, it's, I don't know. I'd rather show my artwork. And I think social media now has become more about sort of the presence of the person behind it. It's like, we want to see who they are. We want to see their face. And I'm still a little bit like, I don't know that. I don't know if I'm also not in my 20s anymore. So that whole idea of sort of putting myself out there that way isn't as appealing to me. I'd rather, like you said, put the artwork out there and let's see what happens. But yeah, so
I know you've been doing art for a long time, so I was wondering if you feel that this is true. I've heard that when you're showing your art in the art world, back when the even social media was more niche, if you the art community tends to want to see edgier art that kind of pushes the envelope of tropes and what has come before and trends. Whereas on social media, artists who stay in line with trends And tropes tend to be rewarded with greater visibility. Whereas if you push the envelope too much, if your artwork is a little too edgy, a little too abstract, too expressive, like a too anything, the algorithm kind of works against you in terms of visibility. Do you find that to be true, that kind of a contrast between the mainstream audience versus an art community audience?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because, well, I will say when I was content, because at one point I had an artist studio, like in an artist community built type building. And I do remember somebody, a fellow artist saying to me, you know, you really don't have, like, you don't have this thing that you're doing that's really recognizable. Because I've always been, yeah, I know that can be a little, but it's like, I've always kind of gone wherever I feel like going, which has been sort of my downfall in the sense of, I'm kind of unpredictable where my artwork is concerned. And I think sometimes there's this expectation of, you know, if you're creating something, it's so recognizable, and and that's how you get that following. People go, oh, I know that's Abigail Larson. I know that's her work. I recognize it immediately. And then they develop that following from it, which, by the way, I love Abigail Larson's artwork a lot.
Beautiful, yeah.
I love her stuff, but she's very recognizable in what she does. I tend to kind of go, that's why I was surprised when you said, I recognize you, like you have a style. I'm like, I do.
I think so.
Because
Yeah.
I never thought of myself
so.
as actually having one. I tend to kind of just go wherever the muse takes me, which can be a problem, because once people start liking what you're doing, I tend to change it up. And
Yeah,
then
that's
it's like,
that's
and then they go, who is that? What is she doing? So, and I have a feeling that'll be the case, you know, like with the Poe Tarot. People are finding me who might think that all I do is black and white art. And then I think when the Everglow comes out, they're going to be, what is this? You know, this is completely different, which can be good and bad, you know, as far as the people following you.
Yeah,
So how do you
that's
stay
true.
true to your vision? So when you hear the criticisms or critiques, or you know, you put your work out there and you get that feedback, how do you make sure you stay true to your artistic vision rather than change it to reflect what the masses want?
I just do. I have some artist friends that it's, I think for me, I never, my goal is just to create the art. I always feel like even when I write poetry, I have something inside of me I want to put out there. Whether it's received or not, it's not that it doesn't matter, because it does, but I also know artists who create something and it's like they keep following in that line, because that's what's providing income, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's, if you can get into that and you're happy and everything's going the way you want, I think that's wonderful. I've just never found that that's the case for me. It's like I get to that point and then I switch gears, and I don't know if that's something, you know, maybe there's something I need to analyze with that. I need to sit down and figure out, but you know, I don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
So how,
And
like,
I don't know if I answered it.
you did. But how do you see, since you just said that you're constantly, you know, evolving, what do you think that, how do you see your work evolving now, like looking a little bit forward? Do you think you're going to switch styles, you know, or mediums or anything like that?
It's entirely possible, because when I first started out, I started out as a sculptor. You know, I was sculpting in clay, and I didn't pick up drawing. And I mean, I always doodled when I was younger. In my teenage years, I kind of doodled and that kind of thing. But As far as painting and watercolors and doing all that, that sort of came about in 2009. I started doing that. And then around 2015, I started drawing again. So, and it became about sketching and drawing. And I think in all honesty, that's my favorite way to go. So I don't see that changing very much. I really like to do the ink and incorporate, you know, maybe some paint with it or markers or digital aspects. But it's hard to say because I have shifted gears all these years. It's like I'll do something for a while, and then when I'm tired of doing that, I do something else. I think that's one of the reasons why I write, one of the reasons why I kind of dive into different areas, because maybe I get bored easily. But once I have my sights on something to do a project, like for instance, the Poe Tarot, it's like, no, I'm going to do it and finish it. So it's, you know, it does get done, but I don't know if I can say, well, I see myself in 5 years doing such and such, because I think I stopped doing that a long time ago. I realized that life was short, and it's like you do wherever you feel like being, like you do what you feel like doing. And if it brings you joy, that's what you do. So that's kind of been where I've gone with everything.
What artists would you say have influenced your style, and what artists inspire you?
Oh gosh. I don't know if there's anyone that in particular that influences my style of art, but I've always loved Arthur Rackham. You know, I love illustrations. I love Harry Clark's illustrations, Ed Gorey. They definitely are an influence. Like I said, Abigail Larson, I love her style of artwork. But then I love, you know, like Van Gogh and Jeremy Hush. I don't know if you
Yes.
know Jeremy Hush's work. Oh gosh,
The Hush
you know,
Tarot.
that's somebody who I aspire to be that good. But I love his artwork. Brian Froud. Who else? Oh, I love Julia Jeffrey.
She's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot. I love, there's so many artists out there that I just love. I love you guys. I love your artwork. You know, I really do. I mean, there's so many artists that I love. And I like to look at their art, definitely. But I don't know if there's anyone that really that I could say this person directly influenced what I do, you know.
I found the artist's name that I was talking about earlier, Aubrey Beardsley from the 1890s. Like, it's a very different style, but then there's just something about it. The way you do the lines is a little bit abstract. It's more expressive than attempting realism, but then it's realistic in the way it evokes art emotions. So Aubrey Beardsley was who I was thinking about earlier. You have kind of like that same.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at.
Has the same aura.
I definitely see it. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. I have to look that up. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because you know the solid black ink areas. Yeah, I see what you mean, Benabel. So Trisha, if you were to give any advice to a potential new artist who's looking to create their own deck, we like to close our chat with that. What would you tell somebody? Like, what's the best thing that you could advice that you can give them?
Be patient with yourself. Do research, you know, definitely research the subject matter. I think that's really important. You know, if you're going to do a tarot deck, make sure you know the system, make sure you really understand it, because people are going to nitpick it, and make sure that you do. I think it's important. Because I author and illustrate my work. I don't have an author write my work for me. So I have to really understand what it is I'm doing. And like when I picked the Poe Tarot, I had to really research. I mean, I knew Poe pretty well, but I had to really research what I was doing. So I think it's important that you do that and understand that it's going to take time. I think a lot of people, when they dive into it, think, oh, I'll just churn it out, sort of, but it's 78 cards. It's a lot. And even with an oracle, that's on average 44 cards. So it's a lot. And you're not going to love every single card you create. It's, you know, if you can get it where you create that card and it's perfect and it's exactly what you want, wonderful. But 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be perfect every single time. You may have to go back and redraw that card. And so it takes time, and then you have to decide, okay, am I going to kickstart this? Is this just for me? Is this something I'm going to take out to a mainstream publisher? So there's a lot of what ifs, and then you have to decide, okay, if it goes to mainstream publisher, can I handle when the reviews start coming in? Because you're going to get the people who absolutely love it, and you're going to get the people that absolutely hate it. Or they're going to nitpick something that is so beyond your control, which I've seen and I've experienced. So you have to kind of develop the skin for it. And then I think once you do that too, like once you put yourself out there, there's always going to be what's coming next. What are you going to come up with next? What are you going to do now? So at least that's what I'm
asking you that question.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling like now. You know, it's like, okay, what's coming up now? You put this out there. We know who you are now. You know, there's no more hiding anymore. You have to keep up with it. It's a lot of marketing. You know, it's a constant. You have to understand that it's not just about the creative process. There's all the marketing that goes along with it, and takes a lot of energy, a lot of time.
I really love what you said earlier in terms of your advice about what I heard was the maturity of an artist. You really do see as someone who knows when something is still a rough draft or a first, second, third draft versus a final draft. I think as an amateur artist or a new young artist, we pull the trigger too soon. You put something out there, you think it's done, but then the maturity of an artist is to realize it's not done yet and to keep on working and tinkering on that draft until it is finalized. So I really love that patience aspect to art.
I think honestly, when I started writing again, that really awakened that in me, because I realized that, you know, the first novel I wrote back in 2008, and I put it aside, and I didn't dust it off really until 2020. And then when I looked it over, I went, what I thought was finished was not. It was far from it. So that became a second draft, and then it became a third draft, and then it became a fourth, until I finally felt like this is good, I can put this out. But that really taught me to be more patient with my artwork, because when I did first start out, like you said, you know, I'd create a piece and I would go, oh, look what I did, you know, to the world. And I look back on those pieces now and I kind of cringe a little bit. You know, I totally cringe, because I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me that the hand it looks like that? You know, it's not right. Or why didn't somebody tell me that the eyes were, you know? I think that as you mature as an artist and you keep at the craft, you get better at what you're doing, and your artist's eye can pick up things before you show it to the world.
Before you get posted.
Yeah, and I tend to, like, if I draw it in my sketchbook, I'll put it up on the computer, and it has a totally different look to it than it does when you're hovered over it like this. You don't see what you would on a computer screen. So
yeah.
There's a big difference. And you can spot those little errors and flaws and changes you need to make. But I do agree with what you were saying about, you know, having the patience to, you know, maybe the one and done is, you know, not always one and done. You have to go back. You might have to re-edit. You might have to change things, especially if you want to keep a consistent style. I think that's important.
I have a trick usually to what you were saying, because your eyes get used to it. I was taught in school whenever you finish a painting and you think you're done with it, to flip it upside down.
Yes.
So that when you walk inside the room, and if it's on the computer, you know, flip it upside down, like, and then your eye gets used to seeing that. So you're dissociating from what you knew, right? And then look at it for like a day like that, and then flip it back. And you will see all the imperfections that you didn't necessarily notice to begin with. So the whole idea is to get your brain to see your art as objective. And you only have very little time before you go back to realizing that it's, you know, you think it's really good. Because for about like a minute, you know, you'll see it as somebody else's work. So I always, whenever I finish a painting, because usually I have them on boards, I will flip them upside down, and I'm walking in the room and I look at them and they're totally, they look off. And then after a day, I'll look back and I'm like, oh my God.
Do you ever put stuff away and then come back to it and just completely redo it? You know, redo the drawing or the painting or anything like that? Do you ever go, you know,
I have to do that now for like a bunch of my major arcana cards for my own tarot. I'm gonna go back and do like, you know, add some stuff to the first couple of cards that I did, because now it's been like 2 years and I see them differently.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That is $1 million advice. I'm totally taking that.
Seriously, flip it even on the, because if you work on the computer, you know, save it as a JPEG so you don't mess up all your layers, but flip the JPEG upside down and it'll blow your mind. You'll be like, oh, that's how I noticed. I noticed that
I was going to say also flip it, not just upside down, but
and horizontally.
Way.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's because I think we're used to seeing our faces a certain way, and then when you flip it like this, it's like it's just, you suddenly go, oh my God.
You know, that's actually how I improved drawing people. And if you look back in 2018, my people were awful. And what I did was I accidentally mirrored a person, like right away. I was like, oh, I do it perfectly. Then you do the mirror image. I'm like, wow, that's awful.
Right.
That's when you realize, I mean, at least for me, that's how I realized that my people proportions were totally off. And then you learn to improve that way. But that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Trisha, for joining us.
Thank you, ladies. I hope
it was a pleasure chatting with you and you know, seeing your work. And definitely I will put your links below this video so people can check out your deck and your website and your books.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was our pleasure. And everybody, if they have questions, you know, post them at below the video, and Trisha, you'll come in and try and answer some of the questions on our Tarot Art Symposium.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Bye.